Williams Racing and Osama Bin Laden. How on earth can we imagine that they are connected? Well, let me explain. I did this crazy discovery while browsing the Williams history, and everything started from the question, how is it possible that a racing team like Williams, which was the fastest racing car in the world with 16 Formula 1 world titles, became the slowest car on the grid? Just to make you understand, Williams won 9 Constructors' World titles, and only Ferrari has more. So, what happened? We will try to solve the mystery using the 5 W's rule, where the W's doesn't stand for Williams, but they stand for who, what, when, where, and why. Who? Well, that's easy, we're talking about Williams Racing Team. That team that we all know is the second attempt of Frank Williams to build a Formula 1 racing team. Yeah, you get that right. That team is the second one he created. Everything started in the 60s when Frank Williams created the Frank Williams Racing Cars, which was his very small project racing in lower classes. Frank actually was not the best driver in the world, so he soon realized that his path was a different one. Therefore, he began trading parts in Formula 3 until he collected enough money to jump in Formula 2. Just think of him arriving in Monza with a mini car, full of spare parts that he was selling to all the teams and signing promissories like autographs. In short, he had no money, so he was making money selling parts. Thanks to his persistence, in 1969, he finally got into Formula 1. Obviously, we're talking about very simple cars, few mechanics, and zero money. In 1975, a Canadian man called Walter Wolf decided to buy 60% of the stable and provided the money that the team needed to improve. Well, the problem is that Frank Williams didn't like that much to be an employee. So, do you know what he did? He said something like, Mr. Wolf, keep everything, I give up my shares, and I build once again my own stable. So, Frank Williams, with the help of a very young and talented engineer called Patrick Head, founded for the second time his team called Williams Grand Prix Engineering, which became the Williams Racing that we all know today. So this is why I said that he founded the team twice. Was it because of experience or talent? I don't know. The thing is that this team this time worked. The technical side was taken care by Patrick Head, who was smart and very down to earth, while the money side was taken care by Frank, who at that time had a very brilliant idea. In order to find money, he went to the Middle East, where there was and there still is a lot of money. So Williams put together a series of sponsors, one of which was, you can't believe it, was the family of Bin Laden. Yeah, that Bin Laden we know. It was not actually him, it was some of his relatives. So at this point, there was the money, there was the technique, there was the passion, and there was also the drivers. One of them was Clay Regazzoni. In July, they won their first Formula 1 Grand Prix, and in 1980, they won their first Formula 1 World Championship. Both the drivers with Alan Jones and the constructor. From that time to 1997, Williams collected 9 constructor titles and 7 driver titles. But there are other numbers that impress. For example, in Silverstone in 1992, Nigel Mansell took the pole position with 2.7 seconds on the driver in P2. And that driver in P2 was Ayrton Senna. That car in 1990 was the Olympus of Formula 1, the fastest car ever made in those times. From the 2000, however, a slow decline began. First, they switched to BMW engine, which was the best engine on the grid, but they didn't get the expected results. No championship titles, only a few victories. Then from 2006, bye-bye BMW, Williams came back to be an independent team, and the results got worse and worse, with just a few exceptions, for example like the victory of Pastor Maldonado in Barcelona 2012, or some very good podiums in the beginning of the hybrid era. But as I said, things were getting worse and worse until the disaster in 2018, when Williams has finished last in every season except 2021. So, what's wrong with Williams in the recent years? Let's go by exclusion. So, the drivers? Well, I would say no. Actually, Sirotkin, Stroll, Latifi were not great drivers, but Williams had George Russell, who is one of the best drivers in the world. Maybe it was the management on the track? Well, when there are no money, obviously everything suffers, but the pit stop and the strategies were good. I mean, if you compare them to Ferrari, Williams never did a mistake. Not only, they finished 4th in the pit stop classification. So maybe the problem was the engine? Well, no, not this one. That they have Mercedes engine, which dominated the hybrid era. So maybe the problem isn't the money? Well, in Formula 1, when you don't have money, you obviously cannot be competitive. But the real problem might be connected with money nowadays is the chassis. Especially one particular aspect of the chassis, which is the aerodynamics. If you think about it, it has been since the beginning of the hybrid era that Williams had a very low aerodynamic load. Do you remember the cars from 2014 to 2016 driven by Bottas and Massa? They were super fast on the straight, also thanks to the Mercedes power unit, but they were competitive only on the very fast circuits. Because when they raced in very technical circuits, they were suffering a lot. It got even worse from 2017 when the cars got wider and the Williams were less and less competitive. Even after 2022 changes, the problems remain the same. There's too little load, the car is not fast enough, it wears the tires too much, so it's not competitive. When did the load problem start? The story is quite complex and we need to focus on 3 key moments. 1996, the departure of Adrian Newey. I'm talking about that Adrian Newey, the genius behind the Red Bulls. Actually, Newey started to work in Formula 1 since 1980s, with a very brief moment in the IndyCars, and Williams was his first major team. Once Newey arrived in Williams in 1990s, that car became unbeatable. They were dominant, for example, think about 1992 with the car with active suspensions. So if Newey was the genius that made Williams competitive, why did he leave? Well, he left because he ruined his relationship with Frank Williams and Patrick Head. The problem was very simple. He knew his own value and wanted it to be recognized. So he wanted his opinion to count in important choices, for example, in the driver's choice. And what finally broke the relationship between them was the choice to replace Damon Hill. In 1996, Newey discovered that they took that decision without consulting him, so he decided to finish the season helping Damon Hill win the world title, and then he left for McLaren. Since Newey left, Williams became a slow decline in the aerodynamic front. Maybe it didn't depend on Newey alone, but it can't be a coincidence. I mean, you have the best designer in the world. You lose him and the car starts to go slower and slower. It's clear. It's not a simple coincidence. The second key moment is the separation from BMW. As I said before, from 2000 to 2005, Williams changed its name, becoming Williams BMW. And you all remember Juan Pablo Montoya, who was the only one capable of beating Michael Schumacher. There were good drivers, good sponsors, good budget, and the best engine on the grid. Yet, no world title came. The problem was that the two worlds, BMW and Williams, were not going good together. On one side there was BMW, on the other there was Williams, and when the car was not winning, they used to blame each other for the bad performance. Well, actually the fault was almost always of Williams, because if you have the best engine on the grid and you can't win, the problem is the car, not the engine. So after a few years, BMW said to Williams, either you sell us the team, or we go somewhere else. Williams decided not to sell, so BMW bought Sauber. So without a manufacturer, Williams got back to buy customer engines, so many sponsors moved away. The consequence? If the chassis was already not competitive, without money and without the best engine in the grid, it got even worse. So the third key moment is the sale of the team, which happened in 2020. Williams' economic situation was desperate. When you finish every championship in the last position, you even get less money. I made a video where I explain how much money every team gets, depending on the final classification. They lost the main sponsor, Rocket. The pandemic struck, so Claire Williams, Frank Williams' daughter, which became the head of the team, decided to sell everything to the investment fund, Darlington Capital. Restructuring a team like that, while racing the seasons, is not easy. It might be impossible. That's why the technical problems are still there. Where? Well, I'd say that Williams struggles in every track. They are a bit better in the less technical tracks, but in the most technical ones, they struggle a lot. So perhaps the place to look for the problem is Grove, which is the English town where the team is based. We cannot know what is lacking there. Maybe human resources, maybe money for sure. Maybe they need a new wind tunnel, maybe they need a new simulator. Maybe they need a new technical director. Who knows? Why? Well, the whys are many. They had the best designer in the world, Adrian Newey, and they lost him. They had the best engine in the world, BMW, and they lost it. So from those moments, the money started to run out. You're less competitive, you lose big names, sponsors go away. But if they go away, you have less money. Less money means less competitiveness, which means less money. So it's a vicious cycle that never stops. The only one capable of stopping the cycle maybe could have been Toto Wolff, who in 2013 decided to move to Mercedes, and we all know what he did. Maybe he would have been capable of making Williams reborn, or maybe not. And then one of the other Williams problems was the Mercedes power unit. And you may say, how? I mean, it was the best power unit on the grid, so how can you say it's a problem? Well, the problem is that that power unit was so fast that the Williams in the beginning were making good results. So the chassis and aerodynamic problems were not that clear. But as soon as the power unit began to count less, because all the other power units became more powerful, Williams sank completely. Okay, so now that we have all the elements, let's put them together. Frank Williams in the beginning founded Frank Williams Racing Cars. He was penniless and making money selling parts. A few years later, Mr. Wolff buys 60% of the company. Williams wants to be alone, he sells everything, he recreates another Williams, helped by Patrick Head. Frank goes to Middle East to find money. Thanks to the talent and the money, Williams wins the first World Championships. Adrian Newey arrives and that car becomes even faster. And here begins the decline. Williams and Newey don't get along, so Newey moves away. Without Newey, the Williams starts to lose aerodynamic performance, but they have the best engine on the grid, which is BMW. But in 2006 they lose also BMW. So the aerodynamic is not good, the engine is not the best. They lose more performance, they lose more sponsors, they lose more money. But then the engine becomes good again, thanks to Mercedes. So the Williams starts to make podiums, but the aerodynamic is still bad. So once the Mercedes power unit is not the most powerful anymore, Williams sinks completely. Now, what's the situation? Williams has been sold to Darlington Capital in 2020. And now what? Darlington Capital decided that Jost Capito, who was the new head of Williams Racing, is not good anymore. So they replaced him with James Wolff, who was the head of strategy in Mercedes and was Toto Wolff's right hand. Do you remember the team radio, Valtteri, it's James?
Valtteri, it's James. Please abort the fastest lap attempt for the end of the lap.
James, it's Valtteri.
Fuck you. That James, yeah. The big question is, will he be able to make Williams shine again? Or this is just the end of the end? When the season starts, we will find out.